Kiery. She's a niece to several of you sitting out there in the Aga family, and welcome to all of you from the family to be here. So Kela, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thank you to my Aunt Eva for asking me to speak. I hope I do justice to the Aga family because they're really special people. Not just my relatives, but as I look back as a community person and just looking at many family trees and stuff, I really realize how special they really were, and it's a pleasure to talk about them. The August came out of Norway, and when I would listen to my grandmother tell me about, I should ask too if you can all hear me, okay? Because my Uncle Ted is over here, and he told me, you talk into that microphone. This is Ted and his wife Eva Aga Sigmund, and Ray and his wife Annabelle Aga, who are those two are siblings right there, and then Marvin Aga's wife, he's passed away now, but she married into this generation too, so I'm glad that they came today. And my mother was Joyce. I don't know if you remember her. She passed away, I think, in 1962. So I'm her oldest daughter. She had 4 children. My grandma Laura and my grandfather Lawrence are mainly my connection with the Agas and what I learned about them as I was a child. And she would talk about, she wanted to go to Norway, and she wanted to tell me about the Norwegians and all this stuff. And to me, Norway was an abstract place. It was the Vikings and the Sven and Ole jokes. So as I tell my 6 grandchildren about their family tree, I find that YouTube, surprisingly, has some really cool resources for kind of sharing what Norway is all about, because it's not Sven and Ole jokes. Those of you that know a little bit more about it. So this video that I'm going to start off with, you can click that first one, let it kind of get, and then click, yeah, okay, just, that's good. All right, look at the slate when it's orange, if you just click on it. Notice the slate roofs on it. This is where they came from in Norway. Turn the lights down. Is there a way to do that? Brenda! My cousin Brenda's here. This is Augustine, is what they say. It's spelled like Augustine, but there's some really wonderful slate roofs. And actually my Aunt Carolyn, who has passed away, Erickson, and my Aunt Eve got to go there, so we actually got to be here.
Shall we go get?
You went?
Did you?
No, he hadn't went. But he just asked me if we should go.
I have another video that'll be more the houses from a different perspective. So that building was built in 1250.
It's under government protection now. Okay, I didn't understand
I don't know if I would have remembered to see it because now this it's the oldest continual living farm in Norway, so it's protected by the government, and there's a museum there, there's a restaurant there, there's about 30 buildings. I don't know if it's a UNESCO site or not, but it's a really special place. And there's another video that'll show you the architecture in it. I love the architecture. There's a lot of apple orchards around this farm. There's a lot of slate, rock everywhere. That's, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's S-O-R, fjord, that you see. It's an extension of the Hardanger fjord. It's really little. Okay, you can just go to the next slide. Now I'm just going to talk a little bit before I say anything else. History is funny because history is somebody's telling about it. It depends on who says it, and it's just little snippets. And so what I present today, I hope is fair to the people that I talk about because they're snippets of their lives. And to give you an example about how funny it is that people interpret history in their own mind and their own context is that I was showing some second graders an old telephone one day. A guy had one of those wooden telephones with the little things speaking out, and you clicked on the receiver, and you had to have the operator put the phone through. Well, these kids have never known anything like that. They don't have this schema in their mind to even comprehend something like this. And they said, "So where are the buttons? How do you text?" And I said, "You didn't text with this phone." "That's stupid. Why would you want a phone you can't text on?" And they said, "Well, did it even take pictures?" And I said, "No, it didn't take pictures. In fact, it was hooked to the wall." "Oh, you couldn't put it in your pocket?" And some of them were like, "It's really big. You had to haul it around, you know." And I'm like, these were in my classroom, and I'm like, boy, how far we are from their mind to understand just a phone that wasn't that far long ago. And so we had to talk about, no, it didn't have a memory card. No, you couldn't text anybody. They wanted to see the pictures that were loaded on that phone. And I said, no, we didn't have anything like that. Well, why would you want a dumb piece of wood that you couldn't even make your own call on, doesn't text, can't watch games, videos on it, can't play games, can't do any of these things? Why would you want that? And I said, because the old way was you either walked to your neighbors to talk to them, or you rode a horse or rode a bike or something. That's why. That's why that phone was so wonderful. And they just didn't get it. So as I'm telling you about Norway and my third great-grandfather that come here, know that I have snippets of his life. And so I hope I do justice to the Aga family, because I only can understand in limited ways what their life was and what they went through to come here and to America. This is Hordaland. Norway is a monarch with a democratic parliament. It has 19 what they call counties, and this is one of them, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right. This is Bergen. My great-grandmother's father was born in Bergen. It's part of the same area where Agatun, I guess is how you say it. It's all one big area. There's 19 of those. Then they have districts. Hardanger. It looks like Hardanger is the district. Then they have commune, I think is how they say it, or like a it's like a little area, like I don't know how to say it, but like Ullensvang is where my second great-grandfather was born in, but there's also a municipality called Ullensvang. So I think he was in the larger Ullensvang area, not the town of that, because it's across the fjord. But anyway, it's about the size of New Mexico, even though it's the least densely populated country in Europe. It's a fifth in land size of European countries, but you know they're all small. So if you put all the land, because it's all stretched out, I had a hard time finding Norway, a map I could use that didn't have restrictions on the licenses, but this is Norway, and if you put it into a square, it would be about like New Mexico or Colorado. Not really very big, so when people say they know these other Norwegians, I can believe it now. Bergen is right here, and we're talking, here's the Hardanger fjord, and they're off on a little offshoot right in about there. So that, I hope, if you wanna look at this later, you can look at it, but that's kind of the area that we're talking about. It was ruled, I'm not gonna go into a lot of the history, but for 400 years, Denmark ruled Norway. Then, I think it was in 1815 or something, Sweden took it over, and it did not become a independent nation until 1905. My third great grandfather came over to this country in 1858, the best I had the name of the ship and everything, so wouldn't you know it when I wanted to say what it was, I couldn't find it. But, so he was in that Swedish rule time, and things were getting kind of tight for some of those families because of the economics. They kept having kids. There isn't a lot of land that you can farm there. Only 3% of the land, they say, in Norway is good cultivated ground. So as they had more and more sons, more and more families to live on this stuff, that's probably why they became Vikings, because they had to go conquer some other area. They just, and their forests and stuff started to get depleted. So I'm not sure of his particular reasons, whether it was political or just adventurous or what, but I know that he came before the big e-migration out of Norway came. That was in 1866 to, tells me somewhere, I'll see it. 1866 to, I think 1920s or something. There was like 600,000 Norwegians left Norway, but he was ahead of that. Bergen has, of course, this row of famous, I don't know all the particular history about it. I know that the German, they were limiting trade or something. That's called the Hanseatic League. This is Bryggen, I think is the name of that famous building. Norway also had, we must have had good genes, or Norway is very isolated, so I don't know how we made it through our family tree, because in 1349 to 1350 is when the bubonic plague came and killed just lots and lots of people. So it's very rugged. You can go to the next slide. Bergen is so pretty at night. Like I said, Hordaland is one of 19 counties. Hardanger is one of the districts in there. Reinsnos is where his father lived, and Oda. I will talk a little bit about that if this starts coming up. I don't know. We'll put it on there pretty quick. Oda is the town in that little extended fjord. Reinsnos is, Oda's at the very bottom. It's an industrial country, little town, and Reinsnos is off to the side of it a little bit south, and don't click that quite yet, south and east of Oda. Agatun is up a little bit on the fjord, and then Ulandsvang, if he's in that, if he actually was born there, it's across the fjord on the other side, but Ulandsvang is also part of that land around Agatun, so I think that it was just the area of that. There's some waterfalls in here. They're called Twin Waterfalls. This is the name of it. I don't know how to pronounce it. That's the fjord that we'll be looking at. This picture down in the bottom is probably the Hardanger Fjord. Why I put this video in there is because I just want to show you, Norway is lots of snow, rugged, steep. Some of those mountains are 2 miles high. Some of the fjords are just incredibly deep. Yes, very, very, very rugged area. But this is just modern times. And I think about 1858 with your family trying to navigate some of this stuff. So it's a lot of water along a highway, and then it'll come to the Twin Waterfalls, which are just gorgeous, but you'll be amazed how much water is coming out of there. And then it goes down the highway a little more, and then you'll see another waterfall on the side. So if you click that.
Do you think that your name got shortened? Do you think this
I know how
August-
we got that name, and I will talk
Oh,
about
oh,
that
okay.
in a little
I'm
bit,
ahead
but that
of you.
is a very good question.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
And they had lots of fruit farms around here. There's a glacier. This little fjord extension is 24 miles long. Let's see. I'll talk about the naming next. Okay, the music is annoying, so don't turn it up. It's really loud. It's not my pick for its dramatic. I just like this because as you see that water next to it, and it's kind of not as easy to see if you were looking at it on your own computer. It's really moving. And I can't imagine being in some little thing trying to move your stuff or go to church on the other side or anything like that. No wonder they didn't travel very far. Look at how that water moves. And I suppose maybe this is in the spring. Because did you see water like that when you were there?
Yes.
It was moving like that fast?
Yes.
Really? Wow. What month were you there?
Oh, John knows me. I don't know.
Okay. She brought back some really cool pictures, which are all over the internet. If you really got Norwegian relatives, go ahead and look on YouTube. Put in your area. There's people just putting videos on there all the time. Pretty soon they'll come around and you'll see those beautiful waterfalls, which I love. But they're really moving some water too. What was interesting is my daughter had a Norwegian foreign exchange student stay with her last year, and her dad was from Ullensvang area, and I'm like, you're kidding me. She knew this road, she knew all about this area. It was just so fun to see. I don't know if you can hear the water, but that is a lot of water coming down there. There's two of them that meet together. And Bergen, it's interesting too. You'd think, well, this must ice over in the wintertime and stuff. Along the western coast, it's really nice weather from the way the climate is. I don't think it gets very cold there. It's like in the wintertime, it might be like 45 degrees Fahrenheit. It can get colder at times, but I've checked the weather for that just out of curiosity when we have like 20 below zero, and they're way warmer than we are, so.
It's the Gulf Stream.
Yeah, something, but other parts of Norway can freeze up and just stay that way, so. I don't know if this was of value to you or not, but as I looked at this, it gave me appreciation for what those people, you couldn't do much. If you lived on the land, let's just say there was no cars or any helicopters and stuff, if you had to really make your living, even today, knowing what we all know and have what we have, it'd still be very hard to navigate around in that country, so. And then that'll just finish playing out. Maybe you could try, I don't know if it's shut it off or not. Okay, you were talking about the name. His name was Jacob Olsen Aga, and a long time ago, they only had first names. So, nobody needed a second name. And then they would say, well, his dad is Ole, so he was Jacob Ole's son, And I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with that. But there were some people, I guess, that had hereditary names, but most of those were foreigners, so there wasn't a need at first for surnames, but those foreigners tended to use those same hereditary names for years and years and years. So if you have a Norwegian ancestor, then you probably weren't Norwegian way back, because they didn't do that for a long time. Ole's dad or Jacob's, the way I understand from the records, Jacob Olsen Aga's father's real name was Ole Larsen, and then his father's name was Lars Johannesson. So every generation took the father's name. That's pretty much the way it was. The first son was usually named for the paternal grandfather. The first daughter was for the paternal grandmother. And if they followed the naming patterns, the second son had the maternal grandfather's name, and the second daughter had the maternal grandmother's name. Some of the names, so they started out with first names, then they decided somebody needed surnames. They actually passed a law in 1923 where they first started making people have surnames. But 1923 is a long way after 1858 when he came. So I'm sure they did have it, but most of the surnames in the beginning were hereditary. Then the father's name. Some people took their names from their occupations, and we actually got our name from a farm. There's some Oda was another farm, so Aga Tune was actually a farm. Now this is showing you on the ground of Aga Tune. Actually, he was born south and east of that. And he went up to Aga Tune probably for work or something. He met his wife, who was Ingeborg, Tron's daughter. Sometimes it's even confusing because I find out now that some of them went back to Tron's son. The girls would take the father's, like, a male version of it. They call themselves Ingeborg, Tron's son, instead of Tron's daughter. So it's very confusing, and there was no spelling rules back then. Everybody, there wasn't a school of spelling for Norwegian. Even in the United States, you'll see things spelled all over the place. So when you're looking for records, it's best if you know the exact place and maybe the parish, and that's the best way to find it. This video, we'll go to it in a minute, but he went there, he met his wife. She was from up around the Bergen area. Her mom and dad, from what I understand, died in a water accident. He was in the naval, he was a naval officer, and I don't know if he drowned. There's whirlpools in some of these fjords that'll pull down. Navy SEALs, I guess, go there to train because it'll just suck you down. You end up a mile and a half later down there. It's just really wicked in some of these places. So she and her sister Christy, I guess, were left orphans, and they had an uncle. And so I don't know if Christy went there too, but she went there to live with an uncle that lived at Agatun. So she came from the Bergen area. Then he meets her, and they get married. So this is why I picked this, and maybe it was a deadbeat video, that one with the water. How many liked that or thought there was a value to it? Okay, maybe it isn't your thing, but this one, I picked it because the Norwegians were carpenters. They did lots of stuff with wood. They had a lot of rock, but only the richer people had those stone houses and stuff because it took a lot of labor to make that stone into a building. So just the churches and some things, even before they did the stone churches so much, they had wooden ones, and then they lost a bunch of their records. So they started making them in duplications and trying to keep them more safe. But wood was used a lot, and so they did some pretty interesting things, and I think this is what Eva was talking about earlier, that some of these doorways, they also, I don't know why they're all built up. They had a lot of snow, but I think they put firewood underneath these houses, didn't they? Stored things underneath them, because a lot of them, you'd think that'd make their floor very cold. I still don't understand why they built them all up.
I think it's because it was so wet there.
Okay.
So much
All right.
moisture.
All right, so go ahead and click on that, and this is the doors. This is by the same person that did the other one. And it'll sound like it's finished, and then it'll keep playing. And if you catch the words on there, it's talking about that it's in Ullensvang. They're pretty interesting. back further than that. And that, I think, is the one that's the old one. Maybe not. It'll show it. It's that big. I'm looking at it at an angle. Can't really see it very good. I just love the creativity and the authenticness of this, and to know my family lived there. We're walking around those little paths and people still live in these houses. They're not, right? There were families in
Yeah,
there,
you
yeah.
cannot change anything.
Right. I'm sure there's codes and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But I love it because it's like you're stepping back in time. And this is the longest one. It's about 5 minutes long. If you want me to stop it, I can stop it. How many want it ended? Had enough? What? It might be. I love those.
No, keep it going, keep it going.
Yeah. And then why go to all that work to wedge those together like that? These men must have had just winter months to be creative and outdo each other. I don't know. And you notice all the slate. I guess they have benches with the slate. Most of those houses, they have to re-slate them. They have to put them up in a special way because they have to be slate roofs. It's just, I watched a video on how they put those roof pieces on. That's interesting in itself.
Their actual picnic tables were made of slate, with slate legs.
Some of the pictures I've seen of the surrounding area, there's parts of Norway that have this beautiful forest and everything, but there's parts of it that are just like rocky, slate rock everywhere. You can't even imagine one cow getting enough food from this whole big area because there's no grass. Now, this is the video where it kind of sounds like it's going to be done, and then it picks up the music again. I don't know why I did that. There's the grass. You saw some of those, right? This is Jacob and Ingeborg. Of course, this is decades after they came because they came in their 30s. They had, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but her name was Guro, girl, Julia, I'm not sure. She married a Gunder Grunsdahl, and she lived in Iowa. I have a little bit about her. She was born in 1848, she died in 35. Lived in Ridgeway and in Colton, South Dakota. The next one is, picture 3 is Christy and Ole Lee. And he was a tailor and a blacksmith. He died in Sioux Falls in 1898. What's interesting is the 1870s census shows him as a worker in Iowa where they settled on her dad's farm, so that must be hushing at him. The next picture is my great-great-grandfather, Lars, and he'll have his own page. He married a Snebe, Inger Matea, I think is how you say it, it's Mathea. And then number 5 is Jacobus, kind of like a Jacob Jr., Aga, and his wife Laura Johnson, and he died in 27, she died in 1958. And of course, when they came, these kids were little. Lars was 4, she was about 6. I don't know the other one, how old she was, but they only had those 3. This other last 2, the top one is Johannes and his wife Lily, and she was also Johnson. Haven't decided whether they were the same Johnson family or not, but they were born in Iowa. Jacob was born in 1825, so he wasn't very old when he came with Ingeborg. He was a farmer there. I did see here on my notes that it was the big immigration from Norway was from 1866 to 1915. I was off a little bit. 600,000 plus people left. It took 11 years for him to get his citizenship from the time he applied for it until he actually got it. So that kind of puts it, they're talking a lot in the news right now. They waited 11 years to become citizens. He wrote poems too, which is interesting. 3 years after he died, I guess his family, his children, put together this little book, and it was called A Small Gathering of Pious Hymns. And as I look at the northern lights in Norway, and I look at the danger that they faced and stuff, those northern lights would convince you that there is a God. I mean, they're beautiful. And I don't know, they seemed like really religious people. They were Lutherans. They pretty much, when they came here, all married other Norwegians. My grandma, Laura, was a few generations down from this, and she said she was the black sheep of the family one day. And I said, what do you mean the black sheep of the family? I thought maybe there was a scandal. And she said, no, they all married Norwegians. I wasn't from Norway, so I was kind of like the black sheep. And I when I look into their family trees now, I see they did stick with other Norwegians, and they also spoke the language. His grandson, Lawrence, my grandfather, was speaking Norwegian at home, and he was born in 1909, which just blows my brain that he didn't really have to learn English until he went to school. And they had Norwegian-speaking churches in eastern South Dakota and in Iowa and stuff. They had Norwegian-speaking not towns, but their school systems, their churches. They could function really well without learning English. Any questions about them before I go on? Okay, you can click that next.
I was gonna mention that Daddy's Bible is in Norwegian.
Oh, okay. Norwegian, the language has changed too, since the Denmark rule kind of changed some of that, and so there's dialects in Norway that can't even hardly read each other's stuff. I didn't realize that either. This is Larson. I don't know how to say her name. I asked that girl from Norway how you say it, and she made it sound like it was like Mata, and I don't get that out of there, but just to give you an idea, I started learning a little bit of Norwegian, and when you say something like it's jeg, but it's spelled J-E-G. That doesn't sound like yai in our language. So if you said something, I said, can I try out my Norwegian on you just to see if you can understand me, because I listen to these little tapes and stuff. And so I asked her, I said, I will have a glass of beer and a sandwich. That's one of the things that popped into my mind. And she said, I don't know that last word. And it sounds like this. Jeg vil ha et glas øl og smudre. And she goes, I got it all except what's smudre. And I said, oh, well, the tape says it's sandwich. She goes, oh, we just say sandwich. So she asked her mom, and she said, there's this lady from South Dakota, because my daughter lives in Colorado. She said, there's this lady from South Dakota, her family comes from where Dad's from, and all this stuff. And what is smudre? Her mom said, I have heard that, but I don't think I know what it is. So then she asked some older people in the community, and then she comes back, she goes, she's right, it's sandwich. But in Norway, you found that too, that you can talk to pretty much everybody. They know English very well, except when you went, the older generation wasn't taught the English so much, but now the younger generation and all the service industry and stuff, they all know English pretty well, so you wouldn't really. I just started learning it to read those old records like you were talking about, and then I found out it's more complicated than I thought. You just don't jump in and read it. It depends on who wrote it, when it was written, what style they were using. There's one called Bookmall. Anyway, this is Lars, and his the only picture I have of her, so I apologize. That's her mom and dad. They are the Smeebies, and his name is Hans Olsen Smeeby, and his wife Helene Frizzle or something like that. And when I see people looking at their watches, I think, oh, I'm boring you to death, and it's my own uncle. I tell you what, I'll try to get more interesting here.
I want to add something.
Okay.
Our oldest son is Lars.
Yeah, right.
And he has the best time. He lives in the eastern part of the state. So
Lars
he enjoys going to the museum down there, and here's Lars Olga and all this history. It's like Lars Olga. So he has a lot of fun.
And there's a lot of Norwegian history down there too. Lars had quite a life. I don't know. He was like the super achiever person, I think, in our family, because he did a lot. The family moved to Winneshiek, Iowa, and they bought their farm, I think, in 1864 is when, that's when his father bought that farm. And she's from Amaliki or something, Iowa, County, Iowa, by Waterville or some water. I have to look here. I knew I'd start messing up somewhere. Anyway, it's like Paint Creek Church is what it is, the Lutheran church and stuff. And he was educated at the Lutheran College, and he has a degree in teaching. He was a principal of the Lutheran Normal School in Sioux Falls, which then became Augustana University. I have 1918 is when Augustana took that name. And I didn't know that they had two Augustanas in that group. I found that out last night. One was in Sioux Falls, and it was referred to as the Norwegian Lutheran School. The other one was in Rock Island, Illinois, and it was known as the Swedish Lutheran School. He was very active in his church. He was a musician, a teacher. He had also some offices that he held. He had a son that I got to remember to talk about, so I'll stick that up there right now. But Lars taught. Normally, when they had a school, they would have these 4-month terms, and people would farm and do their other life during the stuff, and they'd get paid for like maybe one term. Lars actually taught all 4 terms, which was very unusual for those days. He taught at a place called the Grind, or maybe it's pronounced Grinde School or something. Norwegian letters are way different. In 1887, and that's when he came to to South Dakota, which would have been Dakota Territory back then. It wasn't South Dakota yet. It states that he had 32 pupils aged 6 to 21, which is really different. He taught at the Lutheran Academy in Albert Lee, Minnesota for 12 years. He bought a farm in east of Colton. Colton is about 25 miles northwest of Sioux Falls. He was elected in 1891 to the South Dakota legislature. He helped actually get our state constitution and all that kind of stuff organized. He was elected county superintendent of the schools in Sioux Falls for 2 terms. 1893 to 1897. So he was a very busy person. Hans, which I mentioned a little bit, Old Paint Creek, that's the township that they lived in. They were one of the earliest settlers. They came in 1851 to Iowa, from Iowa to Cresco, I believe it is, Cresco, Iowa. From Cresco, Iowa to Dakota Territory, and they came in a covered wagon. and he came with his brothers and stuff. They had 8 kids. One of them was a minister of the Norwegian Lutheran school, so there was lots of overlap of relatives at these colleges and stuff, and there were lots of ministers if you go into the cousins and all the lines and stuff. Actually, my grandparents were married by one of his nephews in Lead, up at the Bethel Lutheran Church up there in 1927. Ole himself, this could be why he picked the daughter to marry. He was a county board of supervisors in Iowa. I didn't know that. So they were pretty political, I would think, coming to a new country. I don't know if I moved to Norway, if I, and I was trying to make a living, if I jump right in there and get in all those positions and do all that other extra stuff. I don't know. Helene, she was born in a county called Oppland County, Norway. She came in 1850 to America and lived in Cresco. Now, his brother, one of his sons was Godfred, and you can look it up on like Ancestry.com. Will have some things about the Western Flyers. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they were outside of Colton, and he was really good mechanically with his hands and stuff, and he actually built parts for a car. He built homemade cars and sold them to people before Ford took over and monopolized everything and stuff. People built their own cars, and Godfred was one of those people that did that. He also had some military contracts to make parts for the military and stuff at the time, but he says in this newspaper article that he stopped doing the cars because he just got squeezed out. It wasn't competitive anymore. But I think that's really interesting that in South Dakota we had a car manufacturer dealership right there, and plus it was our relatives that did it, so that was pretty cool. Any questions? Okay, you can click that next one. This is Joseph. This is Lars's son, Joseph, and his wife, Clara Thompson. And Thompson was Tarlson, I guess, back in Norway. Her dad was his parents. Her dad is on the end here. The really old picture there. He went by Charles, but I think his real name was Carol or something, Carl. It was like Karel, and it must have sounded like Charles to the person or whatever. But they Americanized their name, and he and 3 other siblings, their parents got really sick, and so they had to be put in an institution to be cared for in Bergen. And so he was lucky enough to come over with his uncle or whoever adopted him, and that's how he got to the United States. And that's his wife down there, Rignald, I guess is her name. I don't know a whole lot about her. She evidently lost her first husband at sea, and then she married him. Clara, the wife, was 1 daughter, and she had 6 brothers, which must have been interesting. They lived in Colton. That's an older picture of Joseph in the middle. That's their wedding picture there. And Joseph is my favorite relative because he would have been on his grandpa's knee. Jacob would have been holding that little grandchild, so he would have known him intimately as they grew up. And I have a picture of him holding me. So he's my link to that 1822 baby that was born. It's just cool because you think time goes slow, but lifetimes really go fast. They go really fast. And I think of how fast my life went, and I'm sure all these people, they're on a few censuses and they're just gone. It just goes so quick. And so even though they came in 1858, and that sounds like a long time ago, it really wasn't. It really wasn't that many generations ago. He built this house right over there at 1112 Sherman Avenue in, I believe, 1938. Is that correct? Sounds right. He made up the plans, I guess, for the first Lutheran church in Sturgis, the Grace Lutheran Church. There was an old one before this one was built. Get tongue-tied here. And he helped plan that and do the finished work and stuff on it. He built that house for his family. He lived in Colton until about 1925 is when I guess they came on a vacation and really liked it, and then they moved out here, is that correct? Does that sound right? Okay, they really were impressed with it. He and his wife were, Clara, were charter members of the Grace Lutheran Church, so were my grandparents, his son, Lawrence, and his wife, Laura. And she ran a massage business called the Brookings Massage. She was a masseuse, and I guess the miners and everybody, she got lots of business from them.
It wasn't called massage, it was called,
Brookings
Baths.
Baths, okay. I got that wrong then. He bought the old Turgeon place when he moved out here, north of St. Ange. I guess he liked to debate things. He had a really heavy Norwegian accent. I just remember a little bit about him. I would come and visit there, and he would be all excited to see me, and he would take these apple boxes. I don't know if you know, I don't remember it, but I guess apples used to come in these wooden crates. And he would take those and he would make little cabinets for all the little girls in the family. And then my mother's little knickknacks were put in there, and so I inherited that. And I don't know, I think Linda got one too, my sister, my younger sister. And what I remember about him is he loved little kids. A lot of adults were like, go play, you know, go run outside and do this. Joseph was really gonna answer your questions. I'm sure I was a little verbal kid that just drove him crazy, but he would let me follow him around, answer all kinds of questions. He'd give me these little circus peanuts. Do you remember the little circus peanuts? They're orangey, spongy, like marshmallow stuff. And I would just always look forward to seeing getting those circus peanuts when I got there. Let's see if there's. He came to South Dakota, I think I said, to Dakota Territory in 1887. Clara, she I guess was an immaculate housekeeper. I don't remember that. She crocheted and baked a lot. She was the first organist at that Grace Lutheran Church. They had six children, or no, they didn't have six. I got it written on the wrong thing. How many kids did they have? They had, I don't remember. I wrote the wrong deal. I wrote Lawrence's.
Five.
Five?
Five.
Okay.
Five.
Okay. These two on the end, Claire's parents, I think it's really interesting. They died 6 days apart from each other, which is really sad. I don't know if they had the same health problem or what, but they're pioneers in the Cresco area. And one of their sons, Claire's brother, was A.C. Thompson. He was a state representative too. And I haven't done a lot of research about him, but it said they lived 2 miles southeast of Colton. All right, any questions, and we'll move on to the next one.
Your Christmases.
Oh, my Christmases, yeah. I don't know. Do you know if Grandma Laura started the Christmas tradition, or was it Joseph and
That's what
Claire?
Carolyn counted it up from, where it
Was
from
from
Mama's.
Okay,
And
so
that's-
they weren't quite ready with this yet. It'll be the next generation if we click on that.
We had 75.
75
Yes,
people at our
Carolyn
last one. When did it end? I couldn't remember what year it
died.
ended.
The year after Mama died, after
Carolyn died.
Carolyn lived in Grandma and Grandpa's
Okay.
house.
Yes, Carolyn lived over there, and also Ruby Harrison and her husband lived in there for a little bit. Their daughter was Ruby. Joseph and Clara's kids.
We're only 4, we made a mistake. It was Lawrence, Carl,
Okay,
Leroy,
Okay.
and Aunt Ruby.
okay. All right. So Ruby Ruby was married to a man named Oliver
Yes.
Harrison, and I remember she worked down at the Chase's place down there, Chase's department store. She was born in 1905 and died in 1971. Carl Auga was a sheriff here in Meade County from 1950 to 1953. He was big with horses and did lots of singing and training horses, I guess, and stuff, right? Leroy, I don't know much about Leroy. Leroy married a lady named Lorena Reed, and he worked at the Galena mine in Idaho, and he died up in Wallace, and he had 3 children, Robin, Betty, and Donald. died in 1958, was the year that I was born, so I don't know him at all. Ruby had 5 kids. Carl and Lawrence, my grandfather, would play at places for dances and stuff, I guess. And the Christmas tradition started in 1998. They had an article in the newspaper that said that that was their 70th year. So Carolyn, I was trying to look in my notes for when Carolyn passed away, and I don't see it. It wasn't very long ago, like 2014 or something. So 13. So you'd add that, those years to that, so it was almost 90 years or 80 some years of 85 years of continuous Christmas Eve gatherings of the family. And that, I missed that, because you used to be able to come there and you could walk in, they had church service over at the church, and then you'd come and you'd eat, and everybody, you know, there were always musicians in the family. Ray is one of them. They would, Lars, their son, their other son, Lynn, they'd play, my cousin, Carolyn's son, Carolyn was married to Wayne Erickson, and Lauren would play, and all these cousins and uncles and everybody'd sing, and I remember singing Christmas carols and stuff when we were little. And Ray was the lefse maker, or you were the Rosetta person, the rosettes, or not Rosetta, but rosettes. And they had Norwegian food and lots of noise and lots of people, and there was standing room only sometimes, I'll tell you. And she said the 75 people was what, your top one? Top number. It was just fun, but you could always count on, if you came and left early, you might miss somebody, which was terrible, but you always got to see somebody. And I like that, because otherwise families only get together for funerals and weddings, or maybe a reunion once in a while. And so this, you always knew, if you just popped in, you could just see a bunch of your relatives. It was just really fun. My grandfather played polo, and his 2 sons, Marvin and Ray. What? You played polo? Your husband did?
But I just want to point out the resemblance of Lawrence to Ray. Tall and thin,
Mm-hmm.
very
Marvin, I
strong.
thought, looked more like him than
Did you?
me.
Marvin was thinner. Marvin was thinner.
Well, I guess they played at the
Well, anyway,
Kit Kettleson
He
place.
looks like that
Yeah, he
gentleman in
does.
the picture.
I don't see it though when I see his younger pictures, like he's in his 20s and stuff. I
Just
don't really see
something
it then.
The statue.
Grandpa had more of a long face, and Ray, I
I'm
don't see
thinking
that.
more the height.
Uh-huh. And I love that picture of Lawrence and Laura, because they always were so affectionate with each other. I was at a thing one time when I was a freshman in high school, and they were eating at different tables, like a Lutheran church dinner, and I saw her blushing and smiling and just kind of, you know, and I look over there, and here's my grandpa winking at her. Go ahead, Ted.
At the Christmas party, everyone brought a gift.
And they switch.
Insignificant
Yep.
gift. And then
Some
they
of them were
threw in a
gags.
pile, and then you drew a number, and then if you had like number 3 and someone number 4, they could take your present.
Yep.
So,
And so they got pretty feisty over those
Yeah.
presents.
there's some strange
Eva
gifts
especially
in
would
there,
grab
too.
it. This is mine. The polo, I guess, was played at Kit Kettleson's place, and there were like matches where they would go to Sioux City, wasn't it? Sioux City?
Biggest ones were in
Sheridan.
Sheridan.
Okay, Sheridan. Okay, I got the wrong town. And then if you made it there, you went to Chicago in an indoor pavilion.
You went to the Nationals.
And some of the people that did that, they played Fort Pierre a lot too. They were Clayton and Leroy Thompson, Bryce Gillis, Glenn Hardy, Mark and Albert Keffler, Ray Kettleson, and Albert Jarvis, if you remember any of those names.
Johnny Egg.
And Johnny Yeager, okay. They bought a cattle ranch east of Sturgis, and they lived on the Schumer place in 1934. Then they moved 5 miles west in 1935 to what they called the Old Snell place, and then they moved to the ranch that Marvin and Carol have lived on all these years in 1938, and it was called the Albert Keene place, if I'm correct. Okay. They were charter members of that. Laura, her family, go ahead and click that next one. I'm gonna wrap this up here, I guess. You never know how long it's gonna take to talk about things, but. These are the siblings, that's Carl, I mentioned him. Number 2 has, and I'm not sure, I think it's the middle little boy, is their other son Leroy, and I'm sorry I don't have an older one. That's Ruby Harrison there, and that's my grandfather. Those are the 4 siblings. Go ahead and click it again. These are their children. That's it. The big picture with the little crisscrosses on it, that was their 35th wedding anniversary, which was soon after their daughter Joyce, my mother, passed away, so that's why she's not in that photo. Eva is the baby, correct?
In
Yes,
that picture.
okay. I don't think Marvin's on that picture. It goes Connie, this picture way on the far end, that's Connie, then Carolyn, then my mother, then Ray, then Eva. Okay, Marvin's the baby then.
Marvin's the baby.
Okay,
He's
all right.
not
I
in
keep
that picture.
getting you as the baby. Right, he wasn't in that picture. And then that's a horse, and they're all on there, I think in order. I think my grandmother always had them in birth order. This is a picture before they passed away. Some of them did. Of course, Joyce passed away in 1962, and then we lost Connie first, and then Carolyn, and then just recently Marvin. Is that the right order? No, Marvin first, then Carolyn, okay.
Or Connie, then Carol.
And that was, that picture
In
was
1
taken.
year.
In
Just
1
before
year, yeah,
Carolyn
within a
died.
few months, so. And Ray still plays. I think that's really amazing, I love
He's
that.
still playing today. He's gotta go somewhere and
I wanted to talk to him and they said, I don't know if you can catch him, he's pretty busy. Connie married Tom Powell, Clyde Patterson first, Tom Powell. They had 6 children, yes, 6 children. You might remember them, Jim, Paul, Cynthia, Woody, Vicky, and Jesse. They lived in Arkansas for a little time. Ray started playing, he told me when he was 10 years old, and he got paid $10 to play for a play at Hereford. Him and Edna, must be Frances Haley's sister, Edna Smith. Yeah, and he married Annabelle May. Okay. And they have 3 sons, Loris and Lynn, who's out on a ranch out east of town, and Leroy, who lives in Denver. And Leroy, you might remember, I don't want to get into all the cousins because we had lots of cousins that did lots of things, but Leroy kind of was known around here because of his basketball playing. So, go ahead on the next one. This is her senior picture. Should I stop or should I just finish?
Graduation picture.
Graduation.
Oh, her graduation. Should I
Yeah.
stop? Okay. I'll wrap it up. That's her father, Lemuel, and her mother, Ida Freeman. And that is Lemuel's father, J.D. James Daniel Branch. His dad was Jefferson Samuel Branch, who came out of Virginia. He was born in Callaway County, Missouri, and he was a Civil War vet that is actually in the Missouri history books. He was watering his horses in 1864. Some bushwhackers that he went to school with came down. I don't know how he had his horses, but they were horse people, and they came down and he was leaning towards the north. That's Isabel Brown Johnson there. Her father was one of the Civil War commanders or whatever you call them, and he went along with her family, and his brothers were all kind of northern leaning, and if you know your history, Missouri was bitterly divided about stuff like that. And he came, and they got mad at him because he was a traitor in their eyes, and so they went to Isabel, and they said, you'll find your man down where he's watering his horses. That's what he gets for being, not on our side. And so he did heal up from his injuries, and then him and his brothers went over to Davenport, Iowa, and enlisted. And he ended up being in some of those campaigns, what they call the Wilson raids, the campaign to Atlanta with General Sherman. He got in on the last bit of the Civil War, and so they have a really nice write-up about him. Go ahead and click on the next one. This is the end. Thank you so much for sharing your pictures with me, to my relatives, and telling me things and putting up with my silly questions. But like I said earlier, I only know what questions to ask in my own limited experience. So a lot of this stuff I didn't know. This is the Busy Bee, Alkali Busy Bee Extension Club. And that woman on the very front is Evelyn Boig, and I don't know the other women, but that's my grandmother on this end and my mother Joyce. And why I picked that for last is because they look like they're whispering about something, and they're so happy about it. And I wanted to end on a happy note, even though we've had some tragedies. But I thank you, and if there's any questions.